fighting games. I literally love everything related to epic battles. Games, movies, TV shows, anything where characters fight, break each other's bones to epic music, and top it all off with incredible choreography. And ever since my school days, I've dreamed of creating something like that with my own hands, but I never had enough strength, time, or frankly, the skills. But now, I think the time has come, because my skills with various programs and making all sorts of animations have leveled up to the point of being, well, at least as good as a slipper, which honestly, I think is pretty impressive. But at the core, of course, I'll be using my favorite, Blender. So, how did it turn out, would you say? Well, you'll see. First, it would be a good idea to decide what exactly is going to happen in our animation. After thinking it over for a bit, my empty head couldn't come up with anything except the most basic idea. Two guys walk toward each other, then they fight with katanas, and finally, there's an epic ending where one of them wins. Honestly, you can't really fit much more than that into a 1-minute animation. I could have also made a storyboard, but after carefully considering just how little I actually wanted to do that, I ultimately decided not to. Now, it would be good to decide who exactly is going to be fighting whom. Of course, I could have modeled a character myself, spending days of my life on it, but by now, you should have realized that I'm a lazy person, so I just downloaded a player model from Unreal Engine. And honestly, I just really like its design, plus since it doesn't have a face, I won't have to spend time animating facial expressions. After importing the downloaded model into Blender, I duplicated it and inverted the textures of the second model in Photoshop so that it would be easy to tell them apart later. The characters are ready. Now I need to come up with a setting for where the events of our animation will take place. Here I decided to just improvise. I quickly sketched out a scene from my imagination, added fog, mountains, various trees, scattered some rocks and uneven terrain, and for the most distant mountains, I simply drew them in Photoshop and added them to the scene as a PNG. To be honest, it doesn't look great, but trust me, I'll edit it later. Now comes the hardest part, the animation process. Character animation in Blender is accomplished by using a rig and a sequence of keyframes. A rig is basically the character's skeleton, to put it simply, and by moving its bones, you can give the character the desired poses. And keys are, in essence, points in time that remember the location of the rig's bones in space. For example, I put the character in one position, hit a dot, moved the timeline forward a few seconds, made another position, and put another dot. And voila! Thus, we have a simple animation of a hand waving. Well, that's to put it simply. Again, there are also things like inverse kinematics, curves, bone constraints, bone physics, weight maps, and a lot of other boring stuff that ultimately helps achieve the desired result. But you don't really need to know all that. The rig on the model I downloaded was, let's say, honestly, not exactly ideal, but that didn't really stop me, because as you might have actually guessed, I had no desire to create a completely new rig for the character, so I decided to take a bit of a risk and try animating with what I had. And I really, truly regretted it. I had to spend a total of 4 long, exhausting hours working through pain and tears just to make this crooked, uneven frame of a step, which in the end I ended up having to redo anyway. You might say that I'm just clumsy, and honestly, I'll tell you, yes, that's absolutely true. I didn't want to keep struggling with the inconvenience, so overcoming my laziness and quickly pulling myself together, I created a brand new rig that was comfortable for me, and animating with it was much easier. As we remember, the animation starts with the characters walking toward each other. I never studied to be an animator, and in my subjective opinion, my animation skills are mediocre. However, I was sure I could easily make a simple, even if a bit clumsy, walk animation without any problems. Or so I thought. But in reality, I spent 4 days on it. 4 days for barely 10 seconds. And the whole animation is going to last a minute, if you remember. At this rate, at best, I'll be making this video in about 2 days. Besides animation, it turns out you also have to create good angles for every frame, set up backgrounds, and do the lighting. By the way, I don't know how to do any of that. I had to fumble around blindly like it was my first time. And that's before I even got to animating the fight scene. I have no idea how people actually fight. I've never hit anyone, at least not today, but that wasn't enough for me. I even came up with personalities for my characters, and it was important for me to show the characters' personalities in the animation as well. For example, the dark character is very insecure before the fight, so he stomps around with obvious tension in his movements, clenched fists, leaning forward, and all that. But the white one is the complete opposite. The white one is a sick. He's confident, has nothing to prove, and the upcoming fight is just a warm-up for him. And it's important to maintain the characters' personalities throughout the entire animation. With great difficulty, I finally finished animating the walk, and it was time to animate the fight. And that's when the real problems truly started. I just couldn't manage to make the fights look as cool as they did in my head. They either looked completely ridiculous or awkwardly clumsy. All of this happened simply because I didn't fully understand how the human body actually behaves during certain specific movements. For example, to animate a punch, it's not enough to just stretch your arm forward with a clenched fist. That looks awkward and unnatural. A real punch actually consists of several distinct phases. When throwing a punch, you first wind up your torso and leave your leg back, then you engage your arm together with your torso, and only after that does the punch itself happen, with the movement finally ending as your body resists its own inertia. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But let me gently remind you, our main task is to create an entire, fully developed fight scene lasting approximately 1 minute while keeping the movements realistic and believable throughout the animation process, which, by the way, I didn't do very well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To start, I went online and downloaded a bunch of different fight references. Anime, TV shows, Roblox, even set up a camera myself and filmed a few videos. And using those references as a guide, I started creating new animation keyframes. This gave me a rough understanding of how the bones behave during those very movements. However, despite the references, everything initially just looked awful. What?
A real mess, artist, damn.
The main thing at this stage is not to tilt like I did. It's better to gradually add details and fix mistakes so that the result looks at least somewhat acceptable. Not everything works out on the first try. After finishing one of the hand-to-hand combat scenes, I decided to make a short cutaway, inspired by the X-ray reference from my favorite fighting game, Mortal Kombat 1. To do this, I animated the strike, then added a skull inside the character who took the hit. I broke that skull into pieces and animated the fracture. I did pretty much the same thing with the ground beneath the character to add more impact to the blow against the ground that follows the X-ray. Later, after adding particles and a bit of dust, which by the way I was also doing for the first time, the computer, by the way, was not happy about this decision at all. Now, according to my plan, it was time for the katana battle. I quickly downloaded a katana model, attached it to the character's hands, and that's when things suddenly got a lot more complicated again. I honestly had absolutely no idea how to animate katana battles at all, and there really weren't many references that suited me either. So, after thinking about it, I decided to use the so-called blocking method. Blocking is essentially a draft version of the animation. With this method, you first set up the main key poses to understand in which direction the character is moving, and only after that do you add smoothness and fix any mistakes. This approach really simplifies the work, especially when the animation gets truly complex. That's exactly what I did with this animation. But here it seemed to me that because of the katana's movement being too fast, it looked kind of jerky maybe? That's why I decided to make the katana leave a visible trail behind it, just like you often see in various stickman animations. I even bought an add-on specifically designed for this purpose, which was supposed to automatically create such trails. But for some reason, it didn't work for me. Or maybe I just didn't figure out how to use it properly. In the end, I simply created a plane, made a special and unique material for it, and then animated it so that it would follow along the path of the katana. It didn't turn out perfectly, but overall the result is acceptable. From this point on, I decided to completely stop caring about the realism of the animations. Because it occurred to me that all that epicness I love so much, especially in stickman fights, is achieved not through realistic movements at all. Even if it looks incredibly lame in its raw form, as soon as you add special effects and sword trails, everything is instantly transformed. Overall, the animation is completely finished. Only the longest part remains. Rendering all of this mess, as you can see, is actually quite a task. One single frame actually takes about half an hour to render. Half an hour for a single frame? After a long and boring render, all that's left is to add music and sound effects. Overall, with the result, I'm not very satisfied and feel like I could have done much better. But for now, it is what it is. Enjoy the final result.